What's the worst thing your sister ever did to you? My twin sister Violet was born 17 minutes after me, but spent our entire childhood making sure everyone forgot I existed first. We looked identical. Same auburn hair, same green eyes, same freckles across our noses. But where I was quiet and artistic, Violet was magnetic. She could charm anyone within 30 seconds of meeting them. Teachers, neighbors, even our parents fell under her spell while I became invisible. It started small. She'd accidentally spill juice on my homework the night before it was due. She'd hide my art supplies before big projects. When I complained, she'd cry and say I was being mean to her. Mom would always take her side. Violet's more sensitive, Mom would explain. You need to be the bigger person. I was bigger. By 17 minutes. In middle school, things got worse. She'd sabotage my friendships by spreading rumors, then comfort me when I cried about being alone. She convinced my 7th grade crush that I had a weird obsession with him, showing him fake diary entries she'd written in my handwriting. When he started avoiding me, she swooped in to console him. I remember the exact moment I realized something was deeply wrong. I was 13, sitting alone at lunch again because somehow all my friends had turned against me. Violet approached with her usual concerned expression, telling me she'd heard what happened with the girls. She claimed I'd called Rachel's mom trashy for working at the gas station. I never said that. I would never say that. But Violet insisted I had, her eyes filling with tears as she suggested maybe I said things when I was jealous. The seed was planted. Even I started questioning myself. Maybe I had said something and forgotten. Maybe I was the problem. Looking back, this was her masterstroke. She didn't just isolate me from others. She made me doubt my own reality. Every cruel rumor, every lost friendship, every moment of confusion became evidence that something was fundamentally wrong with me. I started apologizing for things I didn't remember doing, accepting blame for problems I didn't create. By high school, she'd perfected her system. Violet started dating my crush Dylan after telling him I thought he was weird and creepy. She convinced my best friend Rachel that I'd been talking behind her back, sharing secrets I'd supposedly told her in confidence. Slowly, methodically, she isolated me from everyone I cared about. The pattern was always the same. Something would go wrong in my life. A friend would stop talking to me. A teacher would suddenly become cold. A boy would reject me, and Violet would be there to comfort me. She'd offer theories about why people were treating me badly, always centered around my supposed flaws. Maybe you come on too strong, she'd suggest. Maybe you're too intense for people. Maybe you should try being more like me, she'd add with false modesty. I don't mean to brag, but people seemed to respond better to my approach. I started changing myself, trying to be more like Violet. Less passionate about art, more agreeable, more willing to go along with what others wanted. But nothing worked. If anything, people seemed to like me less. I was becoming a pale imitation of my sister, losing myself piece by piece while she flourished. She had a gift for making her cruelty seem like kindness. When I got sick during my piano recital, she held my hair back while I threw up and rubbed my shoulders. When my art teacher accused me of plagiarism, Violet stayed up all night helping me gather evidence to prove my innocence. When Dylan rejected me, she brought me ice cream and listened to me cry. I never suspected that she was the cause of every disaster she helped me through, but I dealt with it because she was my sister. Family was supposed to stick together, right? The real betrayal came during our senior year. I'd been working on my portfolio for art school. Hundreds of hours of paintings and sketches that represented 4 years of my life. My art teacher, Mrs. Peterson, had called it the strongest portfolio she'd seen in 20 years of teaching. You have something special, she told me. These pieces tell a story. They have soul. I'd been accepted early admission to 3 prestigious art schools. My future was finally taking shape. Finally something that was mine alone. For the first time in my life, I had something Violet couldn't touch or improve upon or steal. My art was purely, authentically mine. The application deadline for my top choice was in 2 days when I woke up to find my entire portfolio destroyed. Paint smeared across canvases, drawings torn to shreds, my acceptance letter rough draft covered in coffee stains. Water damage had warped the wooden frames I'd built by hand. 4 years of work reduced to garbage in one night. Violet stood in the doorway of our shared room, fake tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I had a nightmare and knocked everything over. I tried to clean it up, but she was lying. The destruction was too thorough, too deliberate. Every piece systematically ruined in ways that suggested someone who understood exactly how to cause maximum damage. Paint had been mixed with dish soap to make it impossible to restore. Drawings had been torn along fold lines that would destroy the composition. Water had been poured strategically to warp frames beyond repair. But once again, our parents believed her. Accidents happen, Dad said. You can reapply next year. Mom wrapped Violet in a hug while I stood there surveying the wreckage of my dream. Poor thing. You must have been having such terrible nightmares. We should talk to Dr. Anderson about your anxiety medication. Violet pressed her face into Mom's shoulder, but I caught her looking at me over Mom's head. For just a moment, her expression wasn't grief-stricken. It was triumphant. That look haunted me for weeks. Had I imagined it? Was I becoming paranoid? Seeing malice where there was only accident? Violet seemed genuinely devastated about what had happened, crying randomly throughout the day, apologizing constantly, even offering to help me recreate some of the damaged pieces. Violet got into State University that fall. I spent the year working at a diner, saving money to reapply while watching her post photos of her perfect college life. Every picture showed her surrounded by friends, living the life I'd dreamed of. The comments on her posts made me sick. Living your best life, gorgeous. So proud of my brilliant daughter, from Mom. Violet's always been the artistic one in the family, from relatives who'd apparently forgotten I existed. During her winter break, Violet came home with stories of college life that made my diner job feel even more pathetic. She'd joined the art club, she told us over dinner. The president had called her work exceptional, mature beyond her years. She was already being considered for advanced placement in several classes. I listened to her success stories while wearing a grease-stained uniform that smelled like French fries and disappointment. That's when I discovered the truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. I was cleaning our room after Violet left for her sophomore year when I found her diary wedged behind her desk. I wasn't planning to read it. I respected privacy, unlike some people. But when I pulled it out, it fell open to a page with my name written across the top in large, angry letters. What I read made my blood freeze. Entry after entry detailing her systematic campaign to ruin my life. She called it Operation Twin Swap. The goal was simple: become the favorite child by making me look unstable, jealous, and destructive, while positioning herself as the successful, well-adjusted twin. She'd documented everything with chilling precision. How she'd been putting small amounts of laxatives in my food before important events, making me sick during presentations and dates. How she'd been calling my friends from burner phones, pretending to be me, saying horrible things to drive them away. How she'd forged my handwriting to write cruel notes that ended relationships before they could begin. The entries went back years. When I was 12 and threw up during my piano recital, ruining months of practice, that was her. She'd slipped something into my orange juice that morning. When I got food poisoning the night before homecoming and couldn't go with my date, her, again. When my art teacher accused me of plagiarizing because someone had anonymously sent her photos of similar artwork online, Violet had created fake accounts and uploaded my sketches, claiming they were stolen. She'd been stealing my life piece by piece, and I'd blamed myself for being unlucky. One entry from when we were 14 made me physically sick. Success. Got her math teacher to think she's cheating. Called the school from a payphone pretending to be a concerned student who saw her with cheat sheets. When Mrs. Johnson searched her backpack, she found the answers I planted there during lunch. She's being moved to remedial math now. One less way for her to compete with me academically. The look on her face when they found the answers was priceless. She actually looked confused, like she couldn't understand how they got there. She's so trusting, so naive. It's almost too easy. Another from junior year. Intercepted the letter from the National Art Honor Society today. She'll never know she was selected. Told mom and dad they only picked one student this year and it was me. They're so proud, talking about framing my certificate. She looked so confused when I got the congratulations card at dinner, but didn't say anything. She's learned not to question these things anymore. She just accepts that good things happen to me and bad things happen to her. She's finally broken. But the cruelest entries were about my emotions. She'd study my reactions to her sabotage, documenting my confusion and self-doubt like a scientist observing lab rats. She's starting to think she's cursed, one entry read. Perfect. Self-doubt will make her stop trying so hard. Maybe she'll finally realize she doesn't belong here. She asked me yesterday if I thought something was wrong with her, why bad things always happen when she's about to succeed. I told her maybe she's self-sabotaging because she's afraid of failure. She actually believed it. She's so pathetic, so desperate for an explanation, that she'll accept blame for things that aren't even her fault. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. The entry about my destroyed portfolio was the most detailed of all. Finally destroyed her stupid paintings tonight. 4 years of work, gone. She'll never get into art school now. Mom and dad will have to put all their college money toward my education instead of wasting it on her ridiculous dreams. The look on her face when she saw the damage was everything I hoped for. Complete devastation. She knows she can't recreate it in time. By the time she figures out what really happened, I'll be established as the successful twin. Everyone will see who really deserves their attention. But it was the final entry that broke me completely. Found out something incredible today. Overheard mom talking to Aunt Helen about the adoption papers. Turns out I'm not actually adopted. She is. Mom and dad took her in when she was 3 days old because her real parents were drug addicts who died in a car crash. They never told either of us, but legally, she's not even really family. This explains everything. Why I've always been better at everything. Why I understand mom and dad in ways she never could. I have their real genes. She's just some random kid they felt sorry for. Now I understand why I deserve more. It's literally in my DNA. She's been taking what should be mine her entire life, and she doesn't even belong here. I stared at those words until they blurred. Everything suddenly made sense. Why I never quite fit. Why Violet seemed to understand our parents in ways I never could. Why they always chose her side, believed her stories, dismissed my complaints. I wasn't their biological daughter. I was just some charity case they'd taken in. My hands shook as I flipped through more pages, finding detailed plans for future sabotage. She'd already enrolled in several of my preferred college courses, planning to spread rumors about me to professors before I could transfer. She'd mapped out ways to intercept my mail, monitor my social media, and continue controlling my life from a distance. The final pages contained a list titled, Phase 2, Complete Elimination. She wanted to drive me to a complete breakdown, make me so unstable that our parents would have me committed or disowned entirely. Then she'd be their only child, the only one who mattered. The plan was detailed, methodical. She would escalate her sabotage until I had what appeared to be a psychotic break. She'd already researched how to forge documents that would make it look like I was delusional, hearing voices, making up stories about persecution. She'd found online forums where people discussed how to have family members declared mentally incompetent. Once she's declared mentally incompetent, I'll be their only heir, their only daughter, the only one who ever mattered. She'll probably end up in some state facility, and mom and dad will finally understand that trying to replace their real daughter with some stranger's kid was a mistake from the beginning. I sat on her bed holding that diary for hours, reading and rereading entries that rewrote my entire childhood. Every failure, every disappointment, every moment I'd blamed myself, it had all been orchestrated by the person I'd loved most in the world. She documented my destruction like it was a science experiment. noting which tactics worked best, which caused the most psychological damage, which left me most vulnerable to her next attack. She'd studied me like a predator studies prey, learning my weaknesses so she could exploit them more effectively. I called Mom immediately, my voice shaking when I mentioned the adoption. "Sweetheart, where did you hear that?" she asked, her voice careful. "Is it true?" A long pause. "Too long. Come home. We'll talk." The drive felt endless. My mind raced through every childhood memory, recontextualizing everything through this new lens. Every time Violet had comforted me after something went wrong, she'd caused it. Every time she'd defended me to our parents while privately undermining me, manipulation. Every twin moment we'd shared, every inside joke, every supposed bond, all lies. I remembered her holding me while I cried about losing another friend, stroking my hair and telling me people were just jealous of how close we were as sisters. I remembered her staying up late to help me study for tests I was mysteriously failing despite knowing the material. I remembered her bringing me soup when I got sick at the worst possible moments. She'd been poisoning me in every way possible, physically, emotionally, socially, while positioning herself as my salvation. By the time I reached home, I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching someone else's life fall apart. When I walked into our kitchen, both parents sat at the table looking defeated. They'd already been crying. "We were going to tell you when you turned 18, Dad said. Then when you graduated. We kept waiting for the right time." "There is no right time for this," I snapped. Mom reached for my hand. "You are our daughter. Biology doesn't change that." But it changed everything for Violet. They looked confused. I showed them the diary entries, watched their faces transform from confusion to horror to rage as they read page after page of documented abuse spanning nearly a decade. "She's been poisoning me," I said quietly. "Literally poisoning me. And you let her because you always believed her over me." Dad's hands shook as he flipped through the diary. "This goes back to when you were 8 years old. She's been torturing me for 10 years, I said. And I blamed myself for everything. Mom started crying harder. The piano recital, your homecoming date, the scholarship interview where you got sick. All her. I felt strangely calm now that the truth was out. She documented everything like it was a game. They read in silence for 20 minutes, their faces growing paler with each page. When Dad reached the entry about destroying my portfolio, he stood up so fast his chair fell over. "She destroyed 4 years of your work on purpose," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "We comforted her while your dreams were falling apart." "There's more," I said, pointing to the pages about my adoption. Mom collapsed back into her chair when she read that section. "She's known for months. All this time she's been using it against you. The entries about my adoption were particularly cruel. Violet had researched my birth parents, discovering details about their deaths that she used to torment herself with fantasies about my unworthiness. She'd found out that my birth mother had been an art student, like me, and had used that information to convince herself that my artistic abilities were just genetic mimicry, not real talent. She doesn't even have original thoughts," one entry read. "Everything she does is just copying her dead mother. It's pathetic how she thinks she's so creative when she's just recycling someone else's dreams." That night, they called Violet. I listened from the hallway as they confronted her over speakerphone, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "You're being dramatic," Violet said when they started reading her diary entries aloud. Her voice was completely different from her usual sweet tone, cold, calculating. "She's always been jealous of me. Now she's making up stories because I'm successful and she's stuck at home working at a diner. We have your diary, Violet, in your handwriting, with dates and details." Silence. "We're reading your plans to continue sabotaging her in college," Dad added, his voice deadly quiet. "I was just venting. Teenage girls write dramatic stuff in diaries. I never actually did any of those things." "The laxatives are still in your desk drawer," Dad said, "next to the fake social media accounts you created, and the burner phone you used to call her friends, and the chemicals you used to destroy her artwork," Mom added. Another silence. Longer this time. When Violet finally spoke, her mask was completely gone. "So what if I did? She's not even your real daughter. Why should some random kid get the same opportunities as me? I'm your actual blood." Mom gasped like she'd been slapped. "I worked my entire life to make you proud," Violet continued, her voice rising. "She just existed and got the same treatment. That's not fair. Do you know what it's like growing up with someone who doesn't belong, watching her take what should be mine? Fair?" Dad's voice was shaking with fury. "You've been systematically abusing your sister since childhood." "My sister?" Violet laughed bitterly. "She's not my sister. She's some stranger you felt sorry for. I was protecting this family from an outsider who was stealing my life." "Your life?" Mom's voice cracked. "She never took anything from you. We loved you both equally." "No, you didn't," Violet snapped. "You felt obligated to love her. There's a difference. I could see it in your eyes. The guilt whenever you showed her affection, like you were betraying your real daughter by caring about the replacement." "That's not true." "It is true," Violet shouted. "And now she knows exactly what she is. A replacement. A consolation prize. A charity case who never should have been part of this family. I bet she's wondering right now if you ever really loved her or if you just felt sorry for her." Her words hit like physical blows, because part of me was wondering exactly that. "You destroyed 10 years of her life because of your jealousy," Dad said. "I gave her character," Violet replied. "I made her stronger. She never would have become an artist if I hadn't pushed her. I actually did her a favor." The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, faced with undeniable evidence of her cruelty, she was rewriting history to make herself the hero of my story. The line went dead. We sat in stunned silence for several minutes. I felt like I was drowning, unable to catch my breath. "I'm so sorry," Mom finally whispered. "We failed you. We failed both of you." Dad buried his face in his hands. "She was so young when it started. We thought it was normal sibling rivalry. Normal siblings don't document abuse in diaries, I said. Normal siblings don't poison each other's food. How did we miss this? Mom asked. How did we not see what was happening under our own roof? I thought about all the times they dismissed my complaints, chosen Violet's word over mine, made me apologize for things I hadn't done. Because she's good at lying, I said, and because you wanted to believe her. She was easier to love. That's not true. It is true, I said quietly. She was your biological daughter. I was the obligation. They protested, but I could see the truth in their eyes. They had loved me, but it was complicated by guilt and duty in ways their love for Violet never was. Every hug, every proud moment, every display of affection had been shadowed by their knowledge that I wasn't really theirs. That night, I barely slept. I kept reading the diary, discovering new layers of manipulation. She'd been intercepting letters from potential friends, forging my handwriting to write cruel notes that ended relationships before they could begin. She'd even tampered with my alarm clock to make me late for important events, then consoled me about my time management problems. She'd found my weak spots and exploited them mercilessly. When I mentioned feeling insecure about my appearance, she started leaving diet magazines on my bed with articles about teenage weight gain circled in red. When I confided that I worried about being smart enough for college, she began making subtle comments about my grades compared to hers. She'd stolen my identity as surely as if she'd taken my social security number. The next morning, I started packing everything I owned into my car. Every item I touched felt contaminated by memories of her sabotage. Mom begged me not to leave. Dad offered to pay for therapy, for art school, for anything I wanted. You can rebuild your portfolio, Mom pleaded. We'll help you apply to every art school in the country. We'll pay for whatever you need. It's not about the portfolio, I said. It's about the fact that I don't know who I am when I'm not being compared to her. I need to find out. But you're our daughter. Am I? I asked. Or am I the girl you took in because you felt guilty about not being able to have two biological children naturally? They couldn't answer that question immediately, and their silence told me everything I needed to know. We love you, Mom said finally. Not because we have to, because we choose to. But you chose to believe her over me for 18 years, I replied. Even when I was telling you the truth, I drove to the city with $800 in savings and no plan beyond getting away from everything that reminded me of her. I slept in my car for 3 nights, showering at a 24-hour gym, before finding a tiny studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant. The smell of garlic and ginger seeped through the floorboards, but it was mine. For the first week, I did nothing but sleep and cry. I'd wake up reaching for my phone to text my sister about something funny, then remember she'd never been my sister at all. Every good memory felt poisoned now that I knew her true feelings. I found myself questioning everything about our childhood. Had any moment between us been real? Had she ever genuinely cared about me, or was every kindness calculated to maintain her cover? Even our twin telepathy, something I'd treasured as proof of our special bond, now seemed like evidence of how well she knew me in order to destroy me. I got a job at a small gallery starting as a receptionist for minimum wage. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was a 70-year-old woman who'd escaped communist China with nothing but her art supplies and an unshakable belief in the power of creativity. You have sad eyes, she said on my first day, but artist eyes, good for seeing truth that others miss. Slowly, carefully, I started painting again. For the first time in my life, I created art without looking over my shoulder, without waiting for someone to destroy it. The paintings that emerged were raw, angry, beautiful. They told stories I'd never been able to tell because I'd never understood my own story. Mrs. Chen watched me work during my lunch breaks, never commenting but always nodding with approval. Pain makes good art, she said one day as I worked on a piece about fractured identity. But only if you let it transform, not consume. How do you know the difference? I asked. When pain owns you, art becomes weapon. When you own pain, art becomes healing. I painted my childhood through this new lens. The loneliness made sense now. The constant self-doubt. The feeling that I was always one step away from losing everything good in my life. But I also painted hope, resilience, the possibility of rebuilding. 6 months later, Mrs. Chen offered me wall space for a small exhibition. 3 of my paintings sold on opening night to people who saw value in my story, my perspective. My pain transformed into something beautiful. For the first time in my life, strangers saw worth in something I'd created. But success felt hollow when I had no one to share it with. I called my parents occasionally. They always asked when I was coming home, if I needed money, if I was okay. I gave short answers. The conversations were stilted, careful. We were all afraid of saying the wrong thing. Violet transferred schools. Mom mentioned during one call 6 months after I'd left. She's struggling with her grades. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know how she was handling the consequences of her actions finally catching up with her. She asks about you, Mom added quietly. What does she ask? If you're okay? If you miss home? If you'll ever forgive her? What do you tell her? That some things can't be fixed with apologies. A year passed. My art was getting attention from critics and collectors. A local magazine wrote a profile about young artists to watch. Mrs. Chen talked about giving me a solo show, something I'd dreamed of since childhood. I was finally building something that was entirely mine, untouched by Violet's manipulation. Then one day, Violet showed up at the gallery. I was hanging a new piece, a self-portrait showing a woman stepping out of a shattered mirror. When I turned and saw her standing in the doorway, she looked different, thinner, harder. Her hair was shorter, dyed black instead of our natural auburn, but her eyes were the same, calculating, predatory, searching for weaknesses. Nice place, she said, walking around like she owned it. Very authentic. What do you want, Violet? I wanted to see how my little sister was doing. She stopped in front of one of my paintings, a piece about identity theft that showed 2 figures, one consuming the other. Dark stuff, very dramatic. Get out. We need to talk, she said, ignoring my request. There are things you don't understand about our family. I understand everything. I read your diary, remember? She smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the sweet sister I'd grown up loving. That old thing? I was just a kid. Kids write stupid stuff when they're angry. You documented 10 years of systematic abuse. I documented sibling rivalry. Maybe you should have tried harder to keep up instead of playing victim your whole life. Mrs. Chen appeared from the back office, took one look at the tension between us, and stepped protectively between me and Violet. Gallery is closed, she said firmly to Violet. You leave now. Violet ignored her, kept staring at me with those familiar green eyes. I'm getting married next month. I wanted you to be my maid of honor. I laughed. Actually laughed at the absurdity. You're insane. I'm trying to fix our family, she said. Mom and Dad miss you terribly. They want us to reconcile, to be sisters again. They sent you? They don't know I'm here, but they talk about you constantly. How much they regret the way things ended. How they wish we could all be together again like we used to be. She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, the same one she'd worn in high school. I know I made mistakes when we were kids, but we're adults now. We can start over, build a real relationship based on who we are now, not who we were then. Start over? I stared at her in disbelief. You destroyed my childhood. You poisoned me. You sabotaged everything I cared about for 10 years. And look how strong it made you, she said, gesturing at my paintings with what seemed like genuine pride. You never would have become an artist if I hadn't pushed you out of your comfort zone. I actually did you a favor. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, faced with undeniable evidence of her cruelty, she was rewriting history to make herself the hero of my story. You think ruining my life was a favor? I think challenging you was a favor. You were always too soft, too trusting. I toughened you up, made you independent. Look at this place. She gestured around the gallery. You built this yourself. You're successful now. I'm successful despite you, not because of you. Maybe, she shrugged, but either way, here we are. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Get out, I said again, but my voice was shaking now. Fine, but when you're ready to grow up and forgive family for being imperfect, you know where to find me. She headed toward the door, then paused. Oh, and congratulations on finding out about the adoption. I always wondered when you'd figure it out. Must have been quite a shock. She left, but her words lingered like poison in the air. That night I couldn't paint. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she'd said, about our parents missing me, about family, about forgiveness. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe I should try to repair things. Maybe the isolation was making me bitter and resentful. But then I remembered the diary entries, the systematic documentation of abuse, the pleasure she'd taken in my pain, the complete lack of remorse in her voice when our parents confronted her. I called Mom the next morning. She came to retry J continue edit see me, I said without preamble. Oh, honey. Mom's voice was pained. We didn't ask her to. We don't even talk to her much anymore. What do you mean? She dropped out of school sophomore year, got involved with some boy who was bad news. She's been bouncing between jobs asking for money constantly. Last month she moved back home, but Mom paused. She's not the same person who left for college. How so? She's angry all the time, bitter. She blames everyone else for her problems. Yesterday she screamed at your father for an hour because he wouldn't co-sign a loan for her. I felt something twist in my stomach. What kind of loan? She wants to buy a house. Says she deserves it after everything she's been through. But she has no job, no savings, bad credit. The boy she's with has a serious drug problem. We talked for another hour. I learned that Violet had been telling people she was the artistic twin, claiming credit for achievements that were mine. She'd shown up at high school reunions with printed copies of my gallery articles, my name white-outed and hers written in. She's been creating fake social media profiles using your photos, Mom continued, claiming your artwork as hers. We've had to threaten legal action twice to get things taken down. The pattern was continuing even now. Violet couldn't create anything of her own, so she kept trying to steal what I'd built. We should have stopped her years ago, Mom said, but we kept hoping she'd mature, find herself, take responsibility for what she'd done. Instead, she's gotten worse. Do you really miss me? I asked. Or do you just feel guilty? Both, Mom said honestly. But mostly we miss you. The house feels empty without your laugh, without seeing your art propped against the kitchen counter. Your father keeps your room exactly like you left it. Even though I'm not really your daughter, you are our daughter, Mom said firmly. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. Choice does. We chose you every single day for 18 years. The fact that you didn't grow in my body doesn't make you less mine. I cried then, for the first time since leaving home. That night, I made a decision. I wrote a letter, not to Violet, but to my parents. I told them I loved them but needed more time to heal. I wasn't ready to come home, but I wasn't disappearing forever either. I also started researching my birth parents, using the information Mrs. Chen helped me find in public records. 2 years later, I was ready for my first solo exhibition. The collection was called Borrowed Life, 25 paintings exploring identity, belonging, and what family really means. The centerpiece was a triptych showing 3 stages, a child trapped in a mirror, a young woman breaking free from chains, and a figure finally stepping into light with her own shadow. The artist's statement read, "Sometimes the greatest gift is learning who you are when no one else is watching." The night of the opening, I saw familiar faces in the crowd. My parents had driven 4 hours to be there. They stood quietly in the corner, tears in their eyes as they looked at paintings that told the story of my stolen childhood and reclaimed adulthood. "I'm proud of you," Mom said when she finally approached. "Not because you're successful, but because you survived what we put you through and turned it into something beautiful." "What happened with Violet?" I asked. Dad's jaw tightened. "She married that boy against our advice. It lasted 6 months. She's been through 3 jobs this year. Last we heard, she was in court for writing bad checks. She's also been telling people she's an artist. Mom added quietly. Using your name, claiming your achievements. We've had to threaten legal action twice. Do you miss her? We miss the daughter we thought she was, Mom said. But that person never really existed. She was always performing, always calculating what would get her the most attention and advantage. They stayed for the entire exhibition, met my new friends, saw the life I'd built. My boyfriend David, a kind man who helped me understand what healthy love looked like. Mrs. Chen, who'd become like a grandmother to me. Other artists who respected my work and didn't see me as half of anything. As they prepared to leave, Dad handed me an envelope. Your adoption papers? He said. We should have given these to you years ago. Your birth parents' names are in there if you ever want to know about them. We also want you to know, Mom added, that you're in our will as our daughter. You always have been. Biology doesn't change that. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened the envelope with shaking hands. My birth mother's name was Elena Martinez. She'd been 19 when she had me, an art student at the community college. The social worker's notes described her as creative, gentle, and heartbroken about giving me up. She hadn't died in a car accident like Violet had written in her diary. That was another lie. Another way to make me feel worse about my origins. Elena had died of leukemia when I was 2 years old, alone in a hospital because her family had disowned her for having a child out of wedlock. My birth father was listed as unknown, but there was something else in the file that made me gasp. A letter, written in careful handwriting. To my daughter, I can't give you the life you deserve, but I hope whoever raises you sees what I see. A beautiful soul who will create beauty in this world. You are loved, even if I can't be there to show you. Paint your dreams, baby girl. Paint them all. I'm leaving you my art supplies. They're not much, but they're all I have. Maybe someday you'll understand why I had to let you go. It's not because I don't love you. It's because I love you too much to keep you. At the bottom of the box were Elena's art supplies. Brushes worn smooth from use, tubes of paint squeezed from the bottom, a palette knife with her initials carved into the handle, and a small canvas with the beginning of a painting, a mother's hands reaching toward a baby. I cried until I had no tears left. Elena had been an artist, just like me. She'd seen something in a baby that took me 25 years to find in myself. The next morning, I painted with her brushes for the first time. The colors felt different, more alive, like she was guiding my hand from wherever she was. I painted the mother I'd never known, the hands that had created me and then let me go out of love. 3 years later, I'm established in the art world, represented by a major gallery in New York. David and I are engaged, planning a small wedding with people who love us for who we are, not who they want us to be. My parents and I have rebuilt our relationship based on honesty instead of obligation. We see each other regularly now, and they've never once compared me to Violet or made me feel like a replacement for anything. I never speak to Violet, but I hear about her sometimes through mutual acquaintances from high school. She moved to another state, changed her name to Victoria, started over with a clean slate. She's on her 3rd marriage now, each one ending when her husbands discover her lies and manipulations. She's burned through friends, jobs, opportunities, always moving on when people see through her facade. She started a blog about overcoming family trauma, positioning herself as the victim of an abusive adoptive sister who stole her identity. The irony would be funny if it weren't so sad. Even in her victim narrative, she can't resist stealing my story. Last spring, she showed up at one of my exhibitions in New York. I didn't see her at first. She looked completely different. Plastic surgery had altered her face, trying to erase our resemblance. Her hair was platinum blonde, her style expensive but somehow hollow. But the gallery owner recognized her from photos I'd shown him and called security before she could approach me. She'd been telling people at the opening that she was me, that I'd stolen her identity and her art. She'd brought fake documentation, forged certificates claiming she was the real artist behind my work. When security confronted her, she became hysterical, screaming about family betrayal and stolen lives. I made her, she insisted as they escorted her out, her voice echoing through the gallery. Everything she is, she owes to me. I pushed her to be stronger. I gave her material for her art. She should be thanking me, not hiding from me. I watched through the gallery window as she walked away, still believing she was the victim in the story she'd written for both our lives. But I felt something unexpected as I watched her go. Pity. Violet had spent so much energy destroying me that she'd never learned to create anything of her own. She'd been so focused on stealing my life that she'd never bothered to build one. Even now, in her 30s, she was still trying to be me instead of figuring out who she was. The saddest part wasn't what she'd done to me. It was what she'd done to herself. David found me standing at the window and wrapped his arms around me. You okay? I think so, I said, and meant it. That night, I called my parents to tell them what had happened. They weren't surprised. She's been contacting people from high school, Dad said, trying to get information about you, your success. She's obsessed with proving that your achievements should be hers. She'll never stop, will she? I asked. Probably not, Mom said honestly, but that's her choice. You can't control what she does. You can only control how you respond. They were right. I'd spent too many years letting Violet's actions dictate my feelings. I wasn't going to give her that power anymore. The next day, I painted my response. A canvas showing 2 women, one creating, one destroying. The creator's hands were covered in paint, bringing color to the world. The destroyer's hands were empty, reaching for what the creator had made. I titled it, The Difference. 6 months later, David and I got married in Mrs. Chen's gallery, surrounded by my art and the people who'd helped me rebuild my life. My parents walked me down the aisle together, tears in their eyes as they officially welcomed David to our chosen family. During the reception, Mrs. Chen pulled me aside. Your sister, she said quietly. She called here yesterday. My stomach dropped. What did she want? to know when you're having babies. She said she wanted to be involved in their lives, to be a good aunt. The thought of Violet anywhere near my future children made me feel sick. What did you tell her? That you're no longer taking her calls? That she needs to respect your boundaries and move on with her own life? How did she react? Mrs. Chen smiled grimly, like someone who's never been told no before. But that's her problem, not yours. That night, David and I talked about Violet for the first time in months. We'd discussed her before, but carefully, the way you might discuss a dangerous animal you hope never to encounter. Do you think she'll ever leave us alone? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly, but I know it doesn't matter anymore. She can't hurt me the way she used to. I know who I am now. Who are you? He asked, smiling. Elena's daughter, I said without hesitation. An artist. Your wife. Someone who survived and learned to thrive. Now, 2 years later, I'm pregnant with our first child. A daughter, according to the ultrasound. David and I spend hours talking about how to raise her, how to protect her from people like Violet while still teaching her to trust and love. I've been painting the nursery with scenes from children's books, filling it with color and joy. Sometimes I use Elena's brushes, feeling connected to the mother who gave me life and the parents who gave me love. Last week, I got a letter forwarded from my old address. Violet's handwriting, instantly recognizable even after all these years. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. I know you're having a baby, it said. Congratulations. I hope you'll let me be part of her life. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. I've changed. I'm in therapy now, working on myself. I want to make amends for the past and build a relationship for the future. Your daughter deserves to know her aunt. The letter went on for 3 pages, full of apologies that sounded scripted and promises I'd heard before. At the end, she included her phone number and address, along with a plea to call her. I showed the letter to David and my parents. We all agreed it was another manipulation, another attempt to insert herself into my life when she needed something. But this time, I felt nothing. No anger, no fear, no sadness. Just a distant pity for someone so broken she couldn't stop trying to break others. I wrote back a single sentence. My daughter will know her real family. Then I threw the letter away and went back to painting the nursery. Some people spend their whole lives trying to steal what belongs to others, never realizing that the thing they're searching for was inside them all along. Violet is still searching. I found that thing the day I stopped being Violet's twin and started being Elena's daughter. The worst thing my sister ever did to me was make me believe I was worth less than her. The best thing I ever did was prove her wrong. But the most important thing I learned was this. Family isn't about blood or law or obligation. It's about the people who see you clearly and love you anyway. I found my real family in a gallery owned by an old Chinese woman who told me pain makes good art, in a man who holds me when I wake up from nightmares about my childhood, in parents who learn to love me without guilt, and in a mother I never met who left me everything she had so I could paint my dreams. Elena was right about one thing. I am loved, just not by the people I thought mattered most. My daughter will grow up knowing she's wanted, knowing she belongs, knowing that love isn't something you have to earn or steal. She'll never doubt her place in our family because she'll be surrounded by people who chose to love her unconditionally. And if Violet ever tries to poison that love, she'll discover something she never learned during our childhood. I'm not the same person she broke all those years ago. I'm stronger now. I'm protected. I'm loved. And I will never let anyone steal my daughter's light the way mine was stolen. The girl who used to cry herself to sleep wondering why nothing good ever lasted is gone. In her place is a woman who creates her own light, her own family, her own happy ending. Violet can keep trying to rewrite our story, but this chapter belongs to me. My daughter will know that she comes from a line of artists, that her grandmother Elena painted with love even when the world was unkind, that her mother turned pain into beauty. That love isn't about blood, it's about choice. And I choose her, just like my parents chose me, just like Elena chose to give me life even when she couldn't keep me. The cycle of love continues, stronger than any attempt to break it. That's the real story Violet could never steal, the one where love wins,